I'm Dean, I'm the dad.
I'm Laura, I'm the mom.
And I'm Krys, I'm the daughter.
And together we are Family Plot. Very nice, very nice. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way. First and foremost, Patreon. $1 or $3 are the levels that you can sign up for. It's a monthly thing. Very helpful to us, to keep equipment in good working order. Right now, we're operating one headphone short.
Yes.
So, that helps immensely. If you can't do a monthly donation, Buy Me a Coffee is a one-time donation of $1 or $2. If you enjoy the show, please share it on social media.
Share it with friends.
Share it with family.
With everyone. Very nice. And if you don't enjoy the show, please keep it to yourself. Thank you so much. Tonight, we go back to 1913 to witness the birth and extraordinary life of Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks. We meet a woman who became an activist and who has become known as the First Lady of Civil Rights and the Mother of the Freedom Movement. Tonight, we take a moment to learn about and understand this iconic civil rights figure.
So I really like that we are talking about Rosa this week because I think that she was an incredible woman, not just an incredible woman of color. And it's hard to be a woman sometimes. And when the reason that I'm bringing that up is because this week marks the 15-year anniversary of when myself and Krista and Krista's older brother and my mother, who has passed now, but at the time the four of us went and stayed at St. John's Women and Children's Program for a Better Change in Sacramento, California. And they took us in. And so that is also a place for really strong women. And that's part of the reason that I'm so excited to talk about Rosa Parks' story today, because it really kind of resonates with me.
Okay, so let's begin a bit. Rosa Parks was born Rosa Louise Macaulay. I had no idea that she was related to Mr. Culkin. In Tuskegee, Alabama, on February 4th, 1913, to Louise Macaulay, who was born Louise Edwards, a teacher, and her husband, John Macaulay, a carpenter. Weren't you an Edwards?
Yes, I was.
Just saying, you might be related.
I mean, I am a pretty awesome woman, too.
Rosa had some unusual ancestry in that her Rosa had some unusual ancestry in that her grandfather was Scots-Irish, which is where I get my temper, and her great-grandmother was part Native American slave. So, yeah, she's got some interesting ancestry. Rosa had frequent episodes of tonsillitis and remained bedridden often, as the family could not afford to get her a tonsillectomy. When her parents separated, she moved to the unincorporated community of Pine Level, Alabama, where she lived on her grandparents' farm with her mother, and joined the AME, or the African Methodist Church, which was a church formed by freed slaves in Pennsylvania that still exists to this day. Rosa remained a member for the rest of her life. Rosa attended rural schools until she was 11 years old and learned a lot about sewing from her mother. Sewing would be somewhere between a vocation and hobby for her for most of her life. She also attended the industrial school for girls, as where she took a mix of academic and vocational studies. When the school closed in 1928, she transferred to the Booker T. Washington Junior High School for her final year. Afterwards, she pursued secondary education at the Alabama State Teachers College for Negroes. However, she only completed a year of classes before she had to drop out to take care of her grandmother and then her mother due to severe illness.
That's always rough.
It is. So, before we go deeper, let's take a moment for Krista to do her corner. Wait.
It's not just any corner, it's Krista's corner.
Yay, Krista.
Yippee!
Yay.
Alright, now, before we start this corner, I have some we sort of have some very important news for everyone listening. More like me. Okay. More like me, I have important news for everybody listening. I am, fortunately / unfortunately, for those who don't really like this, I am now going by the name Arthur and he, him pronouns. Anyone who cannot respect that should either try to respect that or stop listening because we don't prefer hate here. So if you don't respect it, that's fine, but just if you don't support it, that's fine, but I at least deserve respect.
Yeah. If you don't support it, it's fine, but if you can't be respectful about your lack of support, that's where we have an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess we lost J.K. Rowling as a listener. Not that I care. Not that I care.
I don't think she was ever listening.
I kind of doubt it. We're not racist and angry enough for her anymore.
Probably not.
Yeah, definitely not. Alright, so have you guys heard of the animal called a dingo?
Yes, dingoes ate my baby.
A dingo ate your baby?
Dingoes did not eat your baby. They ate Meryl Streep's baby.
I'm just saying that's what I know about dingoes.
It's a movie.
That's what I know about dingoes is dingoes ate someone's baby.
Well, that's interesting, huh? Oh,
actually,
fun fact.
It's a movie based on a real life happening. Right.
Yeah, and the dingoes may not have. She may have killed her baby and then just blamed it on the dingoes. I don't know the whole story.
I don't know either. Basically, the dingo is an extent of the Canis lupus family, meaning it's a dog. Yeah, it's a dog, basically, which is super fun because as much as it is wild, you can still have a dingo as a pet in some states. So that's pretty interesting.
Though I don't think most people would want a dingo as a pet because they tend to be really wild.
Yeah, they do tend to be really wild, but if you're like nurturing them when they're like first born or newly born, then you can teach them how to be, better domesticated pets. But like people who do own like dingoes as pets are likely to, keep in mind that dingoes are still wild creatures, even though you can have pets in some states. Anyhow, their location is in, I'm going to try to pronounce this, excuse me if I'm incorrect, Uluru?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a place in Australia.
Yep.
Their speed is about 35 to 37 miles per hour. Yeah, that's about their average speed. 35 to 37 miles per hour. They travel up to as much as 25 miles a day in search of food. Dingoes often travel in packs of about 10, although younger male dingoes also are seen on their own.
Cool.
Interesting.
Very cool.
Mom just showed us food, and now I'm hungry.
Right.
Their population size is 10,000 to about 50,000. So there are not many, as much as I hate to say that, there are not many dingoes. And I'm sure it's because they've been hunted quite a bit.
I'm sorry. Poor puppies.
Yeah, the poor puppies indeed. Honestly, a lot of the Canis lupus kind is kind of very hunted. It's very common for people to hunt Canis lupus.
Well, yeah, dingoes, like wolves, often get hunted by farmers for going after livestock.
Yeah, a lot of chickens.
And pelts. Yeah, they do need pelts as well. But, no, I just don't agree with hunting in general. I mean, if you find something that's already dead, sure, take whatever you want from it, but if it's not already dead, why shoot it? That's my opinion. That's my its lifespan is about 10 years. So dingoes don't live too terribly long as they're not hunted. But like, still, it's longer than you'd think. Cool.
Very cool.
They are from Australia, obviously, and their mass as an adult is 22 to 33 pounds.
Well, that's pretty light for a pup.
Yeah.
Because they are, well, at least the ones I've seen at the zoo, they really are comparable to almost like a yellow lab or something.
Yeah, most definitely.
Or like cleaner coyotes. Coyotes to me look like hippie dogs.
Hippie dogs.
Yeah.
Their diet contains kangaroos, wallabies, feral pigs, wombats, and small mammals like rabbits, birds, and lizards.
And probably chickens.
Most likely chickens if they can find them.
Tie me wallaby down, sport.
Their colors, there are many different colors that in their, like, they have multiple different colors, basically. Pure dingoes come in a range coat of colors, including brindle, black, and tan, patchy, or sable.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can't see it, but I'm gonna show.
Very cool.
So many puppies.
There's so many puppies, but
Mostly just yellow dogs, though.
But yeah, mostly they're like sort of ginger-ish, like tannish. But sometimes they're different colors, and I think it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I've also heard that black is a common color for their coat. I don't know. Dingoes are really pretty.
I think most of the ones you see at the zoo are the patchy,
like the patchy, yeah.
We have dingoes at the zoo,
Yes, we have some dingoes at the Kansas City Zoo.
and they've never eaten anyone's baby?
No.
I thought that's what dingoes ate, was babies.
I mean, they can eat their own babies if they wanted to. I mean, some dingoes have eaten their own babies.
Look, all I know is Merryl Streep once said a dingo ate her baby, and I believed her.
You believed her? But yeah, dingoes, here's a fun fact, because we've been sort of chatting about it. Can a dingo be a pet? Dingoes can make loving and loyal companions if cared for in the right way. Cool. Unfortunately, it is common for people to underestimate what it takes to properly care for a pet dingo. It is more time-consuming, expensive, and harder than caring for a dog.
Well, yeah, because it's a wild animal. Like,
So it's a wild dog instead of just a random dog that you found on the street or something.
there's a reason.
There's a reason they're wild. There is definitely a reason for it.
There's a reason that they don't domesticate some wild animals. Like after Harry Potter got big, people kept getting their kids owls as pets, and an owl will never like you. An owl in captivity, it'll never stop trying to kill you if it can and get away.
There are some owls that are able to be domesticated, but mostly owls are not supposed to be domesticated. Like, I could understand somebody owning like a parrot or a raven or something like that because they're like more able to teach it from a young age, like most other wild animals. But some just shouldn't be domesticated, and that's okay. They should be able to have their own spots. They should be able to have where they're able to live, like outside of a home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like their home is the wild, which is why so many wild animals stay in the wild or in zoos. Zoos can be a good and a bad thing. It really depends. Yeah.
Well, modern zoos mostly have become good things because
They're like holding in the animals, some of the animals that are less able to exist without those places because they're being hunted so much.
well, and there's that, but there's also a group like the current crop of zookeepers knows more about the animals and their environment and their habitat, and they can make sure that, other than getting looked at, really looking at them has almost become secondary to treating them well, which is fine because, like, you look at some of the animals at the zoo, they hide in their cages. You can't see them unless they come out, but they're in good spaces for them.
They're happy. They are happy animals. They're just like, man, as long as I have what I need, I think I'm good.
The furry's talking about animals.
Oh no, the furry is talking about animals.
I'm teasing. Furries should talk about animals because furries have animal personas, right?
Multiple personas.
Right. So, furries should talk about animals.
Well, wait a minute. We need to discuss something really quickly. This now has visually changed to Arthur's Corner, not Krys's Corner.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I actually have it written that way in next week's notes.
Look at you being all supportive. You're such a good dad.
Yeah, but I did this last week, so.
I got you.
Warriors.
All right, Arthur. Do you have anything else to talk about dingoes?
No,
All
it's
right.
all about dingoes.
Got your corner and retired Krys's Corner, who we're not speaking to anymore. And you take the next section.
I shall take the next section. The world that Rosa grew up in was constantly changing world. Alabama, like former Confederate states, had passed several laws to disenfranchise black voters. These laws, dubbed Jim Crow laws, also disenfranchised poor white voters as well. Dumb. Both are dumb. Both are equally stupid. This was a dumb. Anyway. Though that was not their intent. Furthermore, many parts of Southern society were segregated, from water fountains and restrooms to travel by bus and train. Most buses and trains had separate seating for black and white passengers, while white children were bused to school. Black children never were. Black schools were critically underfunded as well. Rosa wrote in her book that she often watched white children bus pass her every day. The school bus is one of the things that taught her there was a black world and a white world, which isn't right at all, by the way. While she remembers the kindnesses that taught her that taught her of a oh, my bad. The school bus is one. God dang it. While she remembers the kindnesses of few white strangers, she could not ignore the racism she saw all around her. From the faculty at her school who were ostracized by the white community for working at a black school, to the white children in her neighborhood who would pick on and bully her for being black, even though she couldn't often fight back.
Even though she shouldn't.
Even though she shouldn't, she often fought back, unable to disabuse herself of the notion of retaliation. When the Ku Klux Klan marched down her street, her father stood at the door to his home with a shotgun. These are the kind of things that woke an anger within her at the mistreatment of one people by another for so little a thing as the color of their skin.
Great job, Arthur.
And now, a word from another podcast.
Hey there, I'm Tara.
And I'm Jessica, and together we co-host the podcast 3 Spooked Girls.
If you love the paranormal
or murder,
join us on Mondays for full-length episodes where we discuss our favorite paranormal stories and true crime cases.
And join us again on Thursdays for our mini-sodes called Stabby Snippets, where we tell you all about true crimes happening in the news.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, wherever the hell else you listen to your pods at. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by using the handle @3SpookedGirls.
Come and hang out with us and get your spooky on while we scare the hell out of you.
The 3 Spooked Girls.
That's awesome.
Very much in our vein.
I would listen to that.
All right, well, let me take it from here. By 1932, Rosa had met, fallen in love with, and married Raymond Park. Raymond was a member of the NAACP, who at that time was raising money for the defense of a group of black men in Scottsboro who had falsely been accused of sexually assaulting 2 white women. She completed her high school studies in 1933 at a time when less than 7% of the black community had high school diplomas. While Rosa did not see the benefit at first, her husband strongly urged and supported his wife's education. Rosa helped make ends meet as everything from a domestic worker, i.e. a house cleaner, to a hospital aide. At the urging of her husband, Rosa joined the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP in 1943 and was voted as secretary. At the time, secretary was seen as a woman's position, and as she later said, I was the only woman there. They needed a secretary, and I was too timid to say no. She worked at this position, even continuing to serve through the NAACP leader, Edgar Nixon's administration. Nixon was an avowed advocate of women remaining in the homes, often saying that women need to stay in the kitchen. When Rosa would ask why she was working for him, he would respond that he needed a secretary and she was a good one. During this time, she organized fundraisers to raise awareness and help local women of color get justice when they suffered sexual assault. She took on the case of Reese Taylor a woman of color from Abbeville, Alabama, who had been assaulted by a gang of white men. The Chicago newspaper called it the strongest push for equal justice in a decade. Later, she organized a campaign of protests on behalf of Gertrude Perkins, a woman of color who had been assaulted by two white police officers. While Rosa was never a communist, her husband attended party meetings and she went with him. She and her husband also worked with and volunteered for the League of Women Voters. She was quite the busy activist and all before the Montgomery bus episode. It was around this time that she got a brief job at the Maxwell Air Force Base, which was not segregated because it was federal land. She rode on the integrated trolley there and had some sense of what the future could become.
So let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors.
Hey, babe. Hey, honey.
Yes, dear.
I feel sponsored.
Yay. It was around this time Rosa got a job working at the home of Clifford and Virginia Durr. Rosa was employed as a housekeeper and a seamstress at their home, but she became the friend of the Durrs. They were politically liberal and encouraged her work as an activist, even sponsoring her for classes at the Highland Folk School, where she learned that there will be only one, and she got a sword to cut off the heads of the other.
No. Highland, not Highlander.
Oh, wrong. The Highlander Folk School was actually located in Monteagle, Tennessee, an educational center for activism. There, Rosa Parks learned from Septima Clark, an activist famed for bringing education to American Black culture, believing it could empower folks more than legal equality. Septima was beloved by Martin Luther King. Rosa studied under Septima for the better part of a year before returning to Alabama.
All right. So, Emmett Till was brutally murdered in August of 1955 for the high crime of possibly flirting with a white woman while visiting relatives in Mississippi. Rosa Parks attended a regional conference on November 27, 1955, where the murder of Emmett Till was discussed, as well as the murders of two Black activists. Emmett Till's killers walked away free men, and that hurt Rosa greatly. So much awareness had been raised in the Till case that many felt sure justice would be served. When justice was not upheld, Rosa felt hurt. How could they make a dent when the Emmett Till case was so well known and widespread, and his white killers could not be held accountable? This was 4 days before the Montgomery bus incident.
I have heard about that story, and what I have to say about that is,
Because some people think it's perfectly okay to treat others as less than human if their skin color isn't the same.
or if they're not the same in the way they want them.
Right.
Since 1900, the Montgomery, Alabama bus system had been segregated. A sign on the bus usually reserved the first several rows for whites only. The back section of the bus was blacks only, but bus drivers could force Black passengers to give up their seats for white riders. And these signs were movable. So, like, you could have a whites only sign the first 5 or 6 seats, but if there were more white passengers than that, then they would come and move it back so that the Black people couldn't sit there. And if they moved the row next to you and you were a black person, you still had to get up. Why? Because black people couldn't sit across from white people on the bus.
Which is ridiculous.
Yes. Now, if the whites only section was full, black passengers had to pay their fare, exit the bus, and then re-enter through the rear bus doors so as not to disturb the white passengers. Black passengers could be made to stand, or if the bus was completely full, forced off the bus completely.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
No.
On December 1st, 1955, at around 6 p.m., Rosa Parks boarded a city bus after a long day of working. The bus was driven by James Blake, a driver Parks had encountered before. A little over 10 years earlier, she had paid her fare and taken her seat, but the bus driver insisted that she followed the law, so she had to walk back past the white passengers outside the bus to re-enter through the rear, and as she stepped off, he took off without her.
Ah, what a gem.
She did not recognize Blake at first, or she would not have taken the bus. As she rode towards home, the whites-only section filled up. At the next stop, 4 white passengers got on. Blake insisted the black people give up their seats for the white passengers. The others sitting around next to her moved. Rosa, however, refused. Blake threatened to call the police, but Rosa was not thinking about that. She was thinking of Emmett Till, a 14-year-old black teenager lynched by white racists for possibly offending a white woman in her family store. Thinking of him, she simply could not give up her seat. Rosa Parks was arrested for a violation of city code, and ultimately, this was the shot heard round the world when it came to segregation in Alabama. Others had chosen not to give up their seat and been arrested, many well before Parks. In fact, those who would go on to successfully change Montgomery buses and put an end to that segregation, the litigants for the Broward versus Gale suit, had all been arrested for not giving up their seats several months before her. But Parks' arrest caught the public's imagination. She was quickly bailed out of jail by both Edgar Nixon and Clifford Durr. She soon began to be interviewed and in some ways became the face of the freedom movement. Many claimed she was too tired to give up her seat that fateful evening. But in her book, Parks said the only thing she was tired of was being tired of giving in.
I can absolutely understand where she's coming from on that. That's kind of been where my journey's been recently as well.
She decided to make a stand.
Let her make that stand. She did not. Nobody deserved how they were being treated back then. No. As people, we should all be treated like people. The leaders of the freedom movement in Montgomery made sure that Rosa went to a court where she was fined
10
plus $4.
$10 plus $4 for.
Okay, keep in mind, sweetheart, this was back in 1950.
That doesn't seem that. Oh,
Well, in 1955, that was probably, 2 weeks work?
It says that. Hold on.
There you go.
Court, $10 plus $4 court costs for breaking the law. A little over 150 in modern money. She appealed the decision as many felt her case was a great case to take to the federal level in order to challenge segregation. In the meantime, local black citizens boycotted the bus. In Alabama, they did all they could to slow Parks' case. For over a year, black citizens in Montgomery, Alabama did not ride the bus, and since they were the largest share of passengers, many city buses sat in garages, and the company began to lose money hand over fist. Eventually, Broward versus Gale went before the Supreme Court and the court ruled segregation unconstitutional, and the city dropped its ordinance ending segregation on Alabama buses.
Excellent. Way to go, Rosa. So after this, Rosa continued on as an activist, traveling and speaking wherever she was called to. However, with fame came reprisals. Her employer let her go, and no one else would hire an agitator. Her husband was fired ostensibly for talking about his wife's ordeal, and she received tons of death threats. She and her husband left for Virginia before relocating again to Detroit at the request of her brother. She continued her work in civil rights and focused on housing segregation in Detroit, doing all she could to fight against it. Parks supported the first campaign of John Conyers. It was she who convinced Martin Luther King to appear with Conyers, not Conyers, Conyers, and she took a job as Conyers' chief of staff, helping him remain grounded and connected to activist issues. Rosa was never wealthy. In fact, she donated most of her money from speaking engagements to civil rights causes. Rosa constantly supported activism in her life, including traveling to the Selma to Montgomery marches, the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, and the Freedom Now Party. She befriended Malcolm X, who she considered a personal hero. In the 70s, she and her husband were sidelined by illness, both suffering from stomach ulcers. In 67, she blamed the Detroit riots on housing segregation and redlining neighborhoods, claiming that highway construction and urban decay had forced thousands of African Americans out of their homes, contributing to the riot. In 77, she lost her husband to throat cancer, and around the same time, lost her brother to cancer as well. In 79, her mom passed. Around that time, she fell and broke 2 fingers on an icy walkway.
Rosa released her autobiography in the 90s, shortly before she was robbed by an African American named Joseph Skipper, who broke down her door, assaulted her, and stole money. She was treated for minor injuries, and when asked about the assault, she said, "We clearly have a long way to go." Skipper was tried and sent to jail in Detroit. However, he was eventually transferred to an out-of-state prison for his own safety. Don't mess with Rosa Parks, apparently.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you have somebody who's been like an icon to everybody and you rob them and you assault them, I would imagine that most people who have heard their story really isn't going to like you very much.
Right. Parks eventually passed away October 24th, 2005. She made a cameo appearance in the show Touched by an Angel in 1999.
It was such a good show, too. I remember that one.
And a fictionalized version of her story appeared with the 14th Doctor around 2018 or thereabouts.
True.
When the KKK wanted to sponsor cleaning part of the highway near St. Louis, thus allowing them to put their name on the Adopt a Highway sign, the local government changed the stretch of road to the Rosa L. Parks Memorial Highway. The KKK chose not to adopt it.
Good, go away, burn.
She has received dozens of honors in her life, and posthumously with President Barack Obama declaring February 4th, 2013 as Rosa Parks' 100th birthday, encouraging Americans to honor her with their service, community, and education programs.
Oh, that's very nice.
So, and let's be real. She spent the rest of her life involved in activism of various kinds. There is so much I did not include because she literally did so much. I mean, even when she was 90 and not well in the head, she was having problems. She donated quilts to a museum that was doing a piece of quilts, a thing about quilts that had helped the Black movement or helped people of color or helped, and she donated some of the quilts she made to that. She fought against housing segregation. She fought against, prison segregation and the way the prison system mistreated Blacks. She never stopped pushing to end all forms of injustice. And
She stood for the violent morals. That's a good thing.
well, that's why I always give the episode a tentative title. It very rarely survives to the end, but this one probably will, because the tentative title I've given this one is Rosa Parks Stand for Something.
I like it, babe.
Several documentaries have been made about Rosa, and Angela Bassett played her in a movie. As I said, she appeared in Touched by an Angel and was written into a 2018 episode of Doctor Who. But I will say I did not like that character once I learned about Rosa Parks, mostly because that character seemed scared and timid. And Rosa Parks,
No, she was a brave woman.
yeah.
She was a brave woman.
In fact, her biggest problem throughout her life was she could not get over the idea that if someone did something to her, even if they were white, she should get some back on her for herself.
Yeah.
I think that's the Scotch-Irish in her. That's what I identify with.
Right? Absolutely. Don't mess with her.
So that brings us to our final thoughts. And mine are, I don't know why we took such a long time getting to this, but I'm glad we did. I mean, I always thought, and part of it has to do with that episode of Doctor Who, but I always thought that Rosa Parks was just a person. She was not an activist until she decided not to move on the bus. And I mean, they whitewashed so much of her life when they taught us about her in school. So I never knew she was so important to the activist movement. I never knew she did so many things. So I'm glad we did it. But not only am I glad we did it, I learned so much. And
Sounds like you might have kind of a new hero.
in a way, yes, very much so.
I mean, not that we can do away with your man crush or anything, but
No, your man crush is staying your man crush. I'm sorry, but that was in there.
I didn't even bring him up. Why are you two doing it?
We have to do whatever.
I just want to make sure this thing gets included in the episode.
Okay.
We love the man crush. He's great. Anyhow,
So, Krys, your final thoughts?
she was a wonderful woman, and if it weren't for her, I feel like a lot of the stuff that was going on back then, it would not have happened. It would not have changed for a very long time. If at all.
Yeah, and that's one thing that gets to me, too, is I never knew how influenced she was by the murder of Emmett Till or the trial of his killers. And while it makes perfect sense that she was, and we may wind up covering that one day because that's a travesty of justice, that's just, but yeah, it just,
Certainly, I've heard a lot of that story. I've heard, honestly, quite a bit of it. It's unfortunate. So I am so glad she stood for not only herself, but she stood for others as well. She changed a lot, and that's the good thing. That's the good thing about it. She stood for a lot, and if she didn't stand for all of that, I feel like it would have taken a long time.
right, a lot longer than it did.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you've covered most of the things. She cared a lot about people in general. I think it goes even more to not even just the fact that it was two different colors against each other, but just she really cared about others in general.
Absolutely, very much so. And she was fortunate enough to meet people like the Durs and even Edgar Nixon, who, when I first met him, I did not like him because I don't like people who do not support women's rights. And I do not agree that women don't belong any place other than in the kitchen, which was sort of his thing. At the end, he turned out to be a decent guy. When she was arrested, he was there to get her out. And she would go out at him like, okay, women are only supposed to be in the kitchen. Well, why am I your secretary? Because I need one and you do a good job.
So he sounds like he was kind of like you.
Maybe. But any other final thoughts on Rosa Parks?
I'm glad that her parents birthed her. I'm glad she was alive for that period of time. I'm glad she was alive.
As am I. And that's so amazing to me. 7% of African American ancestry people with black people, 7% of black people at that time were all that graduated high school. And her husband, whatever else might have been wrong with the man, I mean, history doesn't say much about him, but he seemed to support her. And
yeah, that means a lot when your guy supports you.
Yeah, and I'm good with that. And I think that's our show.
That's our show for sure.
I want to thanks for listening. Thanks for keeping us in the Good Pod's top 100. Actually, more often than not, we're in the top 50. So it's nice to see that we're back there again. Thanks to Bill Barrett. That last name is BEHRENDT. Bill's the guy that does our theme music, so thank you, Bill, for that. If you need music for a project or if you need someone to perform at an event, Bill's your guy. You can reach him at billbarron@sbcglobal.net. Thanks to Paige Elmore, formerly of the Reverie Crime podcast. Even though...
Fortunately, she has stopped doing
that. Yeah, but it was not only did she have a great true crime podcast, but she also... is addicted to Canva, something that she's combined with her own Krys's artwork to create some logo art for us. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thanks.
Arthur's artwork. Sorry. Thank you. Then thanks to Aaron Gnurk of the Big Dumb Fun Show for continuing to promote us locally. Join our Facebook group and join us next week as we look into Dr. Sam Shepard. Bye.